less than a year into our marriage, both in our mid-20s. She gets concert tickets for Christmas, and I assume I'll be going with her. But nope, she wants to take a guy from work who's supposedly a huge fan of the band. She even tells me he's not straight. I'm upset, but I don't want to start a fight about it, so I hold back. She goes to the concert with him, and they wait outside by the band bus after the show. The bassist from the band starts talking to her, and she flirts with him. He invites her to their New Year's Eve show 200 miles away and offers to comp her tickets if she comes. She says she won't go alone, so he suggests she brings her friend. Now our New Year's Eve plans are ruined because there's no way I can go with her. She had made jokes before about having to sleep with the bassist for these tickets and VIP access. I didn't find it funny at all, and I let her know, but she brushed it off. In the end, I didn't want her to hold this over my head forever, so I let her make the decision herself. She chooses to go with her coworker friend, who she now says she's only 80% sure he's not straight. Like what? She texts me during the long drive there. Then, after she gets the tickets, I hear nothing from her. I text her at midnight, and she gives me a 3-word response. I don't hear from her again. The next morning at 11:30, I call her, and she says she's waiting at the subway station to go back to her hotel. She eventually gets home around 4:30 p.m. When I ask her how it went, she says they partied all night, and she took prescription pills and drank a lot. She's upset that she paid for a hotel, but only slept in it for 2 hours. I'm confused and ask how that's possible when she was at the subway at 11:30 a.m. She admits that she didn't use the hotel room at all, and claims she must have slept in the band suite. Like, what? She blames her amnesia on a hangover. So let me tell you what happened the other day. I see my wife after a day or so, and I notice something different. She shaved her private area. I ask her when she did it, and she tells me it was on Friday. Now, here's the surprising part. She never really shaves down there, except as a special treat for me. Later, she leaves for work, and I happen to come across a pack of Summer's Eve feminine wipes in her overnight bag. Now here's the kicker. I've always had this secret feeling that she might have an odor issue, but she's never taken any action about it for my sake. And those wipes were brand new. So I can't help but wonder why she had them. Now, I'm left with all these thoughts in my head. Could she be cheating on me? And if she is it with the bassist or that guy from her work? Should I talk to her about this and confront her? I'm just not sure what to make of all this. Okay, let me clear things up a bit. She received the concert tickets as a Christmas present, but the actual concert didn't happen on Christmas Day. The first concert took place on December 30th, and the second one on December 31st. I don't want her stumbling upon this conversation, so I won't mention the band's name. Just know it's neither Nickelback nor Fish. She'll be back home soon, and I could use some good luck here. Update. Okay, so here's what happened recently. The bassist guy texted my wife last week and invited her to a concert 100 miles away on a weeknight. She wanted to go alone. I brought up what happened on New Year's Eve, and then she got really upset and stopped talking to me for 3 whole days. During the weekend, I was away on a business trip, but I kept in touch with her every day. When I got back, we spent Valentine's Day together. Now here's where things got weird. I was browsing Reddit yesterday and noticed I had a message, orangered. When I clicked on it, I realized that my wife was still logged in on my computer. I knew she used her account for Gone Wild, which I was okay with and supported. But what I didn't expect was that she was sending photos to other guys via private messages. As I kept reading, one guy asked her, "What's the wildest thing you've ever done?" And there it was. She responded with, "On NYE, I had my first 3-way with a member of a famous 90s rock band and a friend. The first thing I did was talk to a lawyer to explore my options. Then, I confronted her about what I had found out, and she admitted that part of it was true. She had embellished things, but the truth was that she and her friend, who isn't straight, and she and the bassist made out and did BJ. I was so shocked that I left the apartment immediately and went straight to the hospital to get tested for STDs, just to be safe. Hours later, I returned home, but I couldn't believe a word she said. I asked her to text the guy a simple question, "Did we have closeness?" and said I'd believe her if he denied it. But then she finally admitted that they did have closeness. My whole life feels like it's falling apart. We were married for less than a year, and I had put my heart and soul into this 5-year relationship. Now, I've moved into the second bedroom and I'm sleeping on a futon. Our lease doesn't end until May. Update. So here's what's been going on. She had affairs with 4 different men in the last 5 months. First, she started having explicit texts and sending racy pictures to a guy from work back in October. Then, at a concert, she met a random guy and kissed him. They hung out again at a drive-in movie theater with a friend, where supposedly they only cuddled. Later, they met up at a club while she was out with some friends, and they had closeness in the bathroom. After a month, he drunk texted her, they fought, and then broke off contact. Now let me tell you about this scary night in mid-December. I came home from work at 6 p.m., knowing she was done at 2 p.m. due to a company Christmas party. But when I got home, she wasn't there. Her pet bunny was loose in the apartment, her car was in the parking lot, and her coat was on a chair. I called her phone, and it was on the couch. I panicked and called my mom. I searched all around the apartment complex, shouting her name and even checked the dumpsters, fearing the worst. When she finally came home, an hour and a half later, the police were there, and I had described her to them in a frenzy. I was so relieved to see her, but just minutes before she had been making out with the guy from work in his car down the street, with her hand on his. Well, let me tell you about what happened on New Year's Eve. There's this bassist guy who's into some stuff, and when my wife and her not-straight friend went to his hotel room, he asked the friend to duck him up the backside. Then, while my wife was there, he had unprotected act with her, and she worried about getting pregnant, so she took the morning after pill. They kept texting, emailing, and video chatting after that. Besides that, she also had an emotional affair with a guy she met on Reddit. They flirted a lot through messages and made plans to meet and have closeness while I was away on a business trip last weekend. But it seems she chose to do LSD with a friend instead, and as far as I know, they didn't meet up. She kept flirting and chatting with 3 of these 4 guys until last Wednesday when I found out. Then, just yesterday, I found out about the other 2 guys too. I invaded her privacy, and that's how I discovered lots of emails and chats about these men. I even forwarded those emails to myself as evidence. And to add to it all, there's a t-shirt that belonged to the bassist, which she brought into our home and slept in. I swear, I ain't gonna let you off the hook easy, I told her. She looked at me, her eyes wide with surprise and fear. You gotta tell your family what you've been up to, I said to her. Her face turned pale. I can't. I won't do that. So I fired back. All right then. Guess I'll just have to make that Facebook post with all those messages and pictures. And you bet, I'll name that bassist too. We went back and forth like this for a while, until finally, she broke. She sat down and wrote a long message to her family, confessing everything. She admitted to cheating with the bassist and other men, and said sorry for all the hurt she caused. When she hit that send button, I saw her wince, like she just lost something big. Not even a minute after she sent that message, her phone rang. It was her mom, mad as hell and sounding shocked. I could hear her loud and clear through the phone, tearing into my wife. I watched my wife's face fall as her mom yelled some pretty harsh words at her. I got to admit, it gave me a sense of satisfaction. And as each of her family members called her out, I felt like I was finally getting some justice. It was her turn to feel humiliated, her turn to feel the shame. So, the morning I logged into her Facebook, I'd gotten all the proof I needed, so why not let everyone else know what she'd been up to? I let it all hang out, her lies, her affair with that old bassist who has his own family to worry about. I put it all on display for the world to see, and then I waited. The notifications came rolling in, one after another. The comments on the post exploded. People were mad, disgusted, and just plain shocked. They couldn't believe my wife had done something like this, especially with a guy who had his own wife and kids and was old enough to be her dad. My wife was still sleeping while all this went down. I was upstairs in our bedroom when I heard a scream from downstairs. It was time. I ran down to find my wife staring at her laptop, looking like she'd seen a ghost. She'd finally seen the Facebook post. Her face said it all. She was stunned. Couldn't believe what I'd done. While she was still in shock, I decided to put the icing on the cake. I went upstairs, grabbed all her stuff, and chucked it out onto the front lawn. I wanted her out of my life and out of my house. She was begging me, pleading with me. She said she had nowhere to go. She knew her parents wouldn't take her back, and her friends were already slamming her online. She'd lost everything because she decided to cheat on me. She was crying, asking if she could stay for a few more days until she found somewhere else to live. But I didn't care. I didn't feel bad for her at all. I laughed at her, told her I didn't care where she ended up. She had done this to herself, and now she had to deal with it. She looked desperate, but it didn't move me. It was a harsh reminder of the pain she'd caused me. And then I closed the door in her face. Just like that, she was out of my life. I'd kicked her out, and I was finally free from her lies. And you know what? It felt good. I felt satisfied. I felt like a huge weight had been lifted off my shoulders. Update. The last 7 months have been a roller coaster for me. However, I can say that I'm in a much better place now. I've started running and working out regularly, and it's paid off. I went from weighing 245 pounds in February to 205 pounds today. I've been able to build a great group of friends. The ones I hung out with on New Year's Eve have become regular trivia buddies on Tuesdays, and we've hit the beach a few times this spring and summer. Besides that, I practice with my band 3 times a week, and we just released our album for free online. We hang out together frequently. On top of all that, my closest friend right now is a girl I met on Reddit, and it's unrelated to these posts. We text each other every day and hang out almost every other night. If one of us is absent for more than 2 days, we miss each other a lot. Life's looking up, and I'm grateful for the positive changes happening. Back in May, I had this incredible trip to Puerto Rico with my mom and aunt. It wasn't a typical touristy vacation. We went to visit family since my mom grew up there. It was life-changing for me because I got to experience my true culture and heritage, especially because I currently live in a mostly white suburb. When I returned home, I felt much calmer and had a more positive outlook on life. Regarding my ex, the simplest and least expensive way for us to get a divorce is by citing irreconcilable differences. In my state, that means living in separate places for 18 months and not being close during that time. Luckily, that's not a problem for me. I've already spent 6 months apart from her, with 12 more to go. I'm really looking forward to the day when she no longer carries my last name. She's still lying to me about so many things, and there's so much I'll never know the truth about. After a few months, she called me to meet up. We made small talk for a while, but then she finally admitted that she had given up. She didn't want me back, stopped going to therapy, and now she's dating one of the guys she cheated on me with. Honestly, good for her. She'll either wake up one day and realize she could have had a better life with me, or she'll find happiness with this new guy. Either way, I wouldn't want to hold her back from being truly happy. For now, though, I don't ever want to see her again, except maybe in a courtroom. I went out on dates with old friends I hadn't seen in years, and also had casual relationships with women ranging from 18 to 30 years old. Honestly, none of that made me feel any better. I thought I wanted to feel young again and have some fun, but what I really craved was love. But, you know what? I'm actually dating someone now, and being with her makes me feel like I can love again. We have a strong connection both mentally and physically. She lives an hour away, which is good because it helps us maintain our independence and avoid a codependent relationship. We still care for each other and hang out a few times a week. I don't know if this will last, but right now, I don't really care. I've learned to live in the moment responsibly, and when I'm with her, I'm happy, and that's all that matters. I want to thank all the supportive people on Reddit. Your advice meant a lot to me, and some of you even reached out to me on Facebook. It meant so much to receive compassion and empathy from strangers. I feel like I'm becoming a better version of myself through this experience, and I'm grateful for that. Second story. Around 25 years ago, I was in the military, and my 38-year-old wife and I lived about a day's drive away from where I was stationed for a 2-year assignment. By that time, we had been married for about 20 years. I would only go back home on the weekends since I was away most of the time. After the first year, she started suggesting that I should stay there and not come home until my assignment was over. I didn't agree with that and continued to come home on weekends. However, she started treating me very coldly during those visits and didn't want to be close. Then, after a few more months, she began accusing me of cheating without any reason and kept acting distant. When my remote assignment was over, I received orders for a 3-year overseas assignment. I started making arrangements to rent out our house and move my wife and teenage sons with me. But my wife fought with me constantly about it, saying she didn't want to go and that I should go alone. Throughout this whole transition, she remained cold and distant. However, my kids wanted to go with me, so eventually she agreed. But as soon as we arrived at the new location, she started finding faults with everything, with me and the place. After 6 months there, I managed to get permission to move her and my kids back home by the end of the year. Over the next 6 months, things were okay at best. She was still distant, but we had some closeness about once a week. As the end of the year approached, she got excited about moving back home, but that's when she started pulling away from me again. In the last month or so before she left, she remained withdrawn. About a week after she and the kids departed, I took 2 weeks of leave and went back home to help out. However, within just 3 hours of arriving, she told me to leave and go back to my base. I stayed for about 10 days and then returned overseas to my base, where I stayed for another 2.5 years. I'd visit home about every 4 months for 10 days, but I was treated the same way as the first time. We were close maybe twice during those visits, but I had this feeling that she was doing it out of obligation rather than desire. It seemed like she wasn't really happy when I was there, and she even told me she'd prefer it if I didn't come back home until my overseas time was finished. For the remaining year and a half, she continued to be cold and distant whenever I visited or called to check in, and if I mentioned going to a cookout or bowling, she'd accuse me of cheating and hang up. She used to constantly blame me for everything and make it seem like I was always in her way. Even after I got transferred back, she remained distant and cold. Eventually, after 6 months, I decided to move out. I stayed away and even told her I wanted a divorce if she kept treating me that way. So she agreed to go for marriage counseling, but it didn't feel very helpful. She put the blame on me, saying I didn't understand her or what she wanted. I moved back home and just ignored the issue from then on. After leaving the military, I took a job that involved a lot of travel. Now, after 25 years, we're both in our 60s and retired. I have plenty of time to reflect on the past. Looking back, I see things more clearly now. I've read articles about cheating spouses, and her actions back then fit the patterns described by others who have cheated. Although I don't have concrete proof, there were enough signs and hints to make me suspicious. Over the years, some of her friends and former co-workers have made snide remarks about her possibly cheating when we've been together and had a few drinks. I've brought it up to her a few times, but it's never been fully resolved. She never denies what others say about her, but instead questions their honesty or suggests they were probably doing the same thing themselves. We still have occasional major arguments, and sometimes I feel so emotionally drained from always being the target of her anger that I leave for a few hours to regain my composure. When I come back, I ask her if she wants me to leave for good, and then she immediately denies ever cheating and claims to have always been faithful. To sum it up, 25 years ago, my wife showed all the signs that experts in marriage counseling associate with cheating. She pushed me away, became distant, constantly criticized me, denied cheating even when not accused of it, and frequently accused me of cheating, despite being far away from her most of the time. This went on for about 3 years. Now here's my dilemma. We've been married for 45 years, and I'm starting to question our entire marriage. I can't push these thoughts to the back of my mind anymore. Should I leave this issue alone and let it go? Or should I talk to her about all my suspicions, even though it might end up tearing our marriage apart? Update. So I reached out to one of my spouse's previous co-workers' husbands just to start chatting casually. We exchanged niceties like asking how things have been and how work is going. I mentioned that my spouse was visiting her native country, and I'm here in the U.S. Right away, his wife, who is from the same country as my spouse, called my spouse to ask why she's there while I'm here, and if we're separated or getting a divorce and all that stuff. So, naturally, my spouse called me to ask why I contacted them and what we talked about. Now, this couple was one of those who initially joked about my spouse having an affair at work during a party at their house after a few drinks. They were also one of the couples I mentioned earlier who made snide remarks about her possibly cheating. It's been about a week since I reached out to them, and suddenly my spouse has been acting all sweet and affectionate. If I don't respond to her text quickly, she starts asking if something is wrong, or if I'm upset about something. My gut feeling is that maybe that couple actually knows something, and my spouse got spooked when she heard I contacted the husband. I just get this vibe from her that she's scared, guilty, and apprehensive whenever we talk or video chat. Even her texts seem to have that tone. So now I feel like I have to be really careful and cautious when I talk to anyone who might know something about the situation. That's all for now. It's been a while since my original post and the short update. So, I finally confronted her about the cheating accusations. But she just denied everything and kept asking who told me. She brushed it off, saying whoever said it must be jealous of her, even though I gave her all the details of her behavior back then. She just wouldn't admit to anything. Instead, she turned the tables on me, accusing me of not being nice and hurting her by not trusting her. She even wiped non-existent tears during our video chat, although I can't be sure if there were real tears or not. But as soon as I eased up on the topic, she started blaming our past communication issues for the whole situation. Since then, I tried to move past it and even took her on a Caribbean cruise, but I can't find those loving feelings for her anymore. At this point, I don't wish any harm on her, but I simply want to leave her. Now, something unexpected happened. My oldest son and his family decided to do ancestry DNA tests, and they suggested I and my wife should do it too. So we did, and I also had my youngest son take the test. The results showed that my oldest and youngest sons are only half-brothers. Shockingly, the DNA test revealed that my oldest son is not my biological son, but my youngest is. I never even suspected this could be the case, but there was no fidelity. My wife was already pregnant for about a month when we got together. After 2.5 months of dating, she told me about her pregnancy. Back then, I was just 19 and pretty naive and foolish. My upbringing and my infatuation with her made me believe that I should marry her. So I ended up raising 2 kids that weren't mine. She had a 4-month-old when we met, and one that was. I love the 2 oldest kids just as much as my youngest, and that won't ever change. I haven't talked to my wife about this yet. First, I need to discuss it with my oldest son, and then all 3 of them. I'll have to tell them that I'm divorcing their mother. The 2 oldest kids will have to ask her about who their biological fathers are because I have no idea. After that, I'll have a video chat with her and tell her everything and my plans to file for divorce. I still have this feeling that there might have been at least an emotional affair and possibly a physical affair 25 to 30 years ago. But I'll likely never know for sure. My decision to divorce is really based on years of emotional and threatened physical abuse, constant lack of respect for me, and her lack of empathy or consideration for anything I needed or wanted. In my last update, I mentioned that I was going to tell my kids the truth and then talk to my wife. Well, I did that 5 days ago. It was tough, but my kids took it pretty well, although my oldest son might still be processing everything. I also let my oldest child know about their paternity, and they weren't really surprised. I don't know if their biological fathers are the same person or 2 different men, so my oldest child will get a DNA test to find out. I told both of them to ask their mom about it, and hopefully she'll remember and give them the answers. Instead of having a video chat with my wife, I decided to send her a text. After over 40 years together, I knew a video chat would only lead to trouble. I'm feeling pretty emotional about all this, and I didn't want to lose my composure and start a fight, so the text was short and direct. I told her that the DNA test showed the child isn't mine and is only a half-sibling to our youngest. I made it clear that I won't accept being lied to for all these years, and I stated that our marriage is over and I'm filing for divorce. She replied shortly after my text, but I didn't respond to any of her messages. At first, she claimed it was a misunderstanding and that she didn't realize she was lying. Then she blamed our problems on bad communication between us. After that, she apologized, saying she's sorry I hate her so much and that she'd sign the divorce papers, hoping I find happiness with someone else. She shifted to blaming me for everything, saying I never cared or trusted her. Despite all that, I still didn't respond to any of it. Eventually, her anger kicked in, and she agreed that divorce would be best to get it over with. All her texting drama happened over about 2 days, and then there was a day of silence. I texted her back, stating that from now on, I'll only contact her regarding the kids, grandkids, and the divorce. I also mentioned the financial support she'll receive and how it'll work. She's entitled to half my military and federal pensions. She asked if I could send all her belongings to her, and I agreed to do that. Since then, there's been complete silence from her end. She's been contacting our 2 oldest kids about everything. I haven't done the paperwork for the divorce yet, but I'll take care of that soon. That's all for now. So, not much has really happened since my last update. I've got a meeting with my lawyer scheduled for this coming Monday. My soon-to-be ex-wife keeps trying to provoke me into online arguments, blaming me for not loving her and never trusting her, and sending long texts about throwing away everything we've worked on for 46 years, along with pictures and stuff, trying to guilt me into giving in. But I've been successful in ignoring it, staying civil, and only texting about the kids and divorce issues. Right now, she says she'll sign the divorce papers to move on, but knowing her, I doubt that'll happen easily. The main issue is the house. Her house in her country is fully paid for with my retirement funds. Hopefully, we'll get a profit from selling it, close to what I invested. I plan to split the net profit 70-30. She wasn't happy with that, but we'll see how it goes. The kids are mostly okay. My oldest daughter, adopted, has been avoiding me, but I hope with time, she'll be able to cope better. My sons are okay, but they don't want to be in the middle of everything. I promised all 3 kids that I won't put them in the middle of our issues. Yesterday, the divorce papers were served via email. My spouse accepted them, signed them, and sent them back to the lawyer. She said it wasn't what she wanted, but she'd do it for me so we could move on. As expected, she still puts the blame on me. She took the chance to dig at me about the kids finding out and how I made her life terrible. She even complained that I never talked to her and kept everything to myself. The truth is, I started doing that because it became clear she didn't really want to listen, discuss anything, or care about my needs. I almost got sucked into a war of words with her, but I decided to cut it off and sign off instead. It was only recently that I learned about narcissism after reading about it here and searching it up on Google. Every time I brought up a problem with her actions or lack of actions, she would turn it around and say it was my imagination or my fault. She's never taken responsibility for the mess she's caused over the years. Looking back, I realized that every decision I made was based on whether she'd like it or if it would make her happy. I know it sounds pretty sad, but when you're caught up in all the mess, it's hard to see it clearly. Looking back, I can see that her only need or desire for me all these years was to support her and give her the lifestyle she wanted, but she never thought I did a good job at that either. The next big challenge will be dividing our property. It's not like we have a fortune, but she believes she's entitled to most of it just because I wanted the divorce, so she thinks I should give up more. Less than 3 months after she moved to be near that guy, he dumped her. Turns out he was just using her for closeness, and she was devastated because she thought she loved him. He seemed fine with her being married, but when I found out about the cheating and divorced her, he wanted nothing to do with a single lady with 3 young kids. She wanted to marry him and move into his house, but he had always been single. Then, 2 years later, she married another man who had nothing to do with us, and I actually liked him. But he got fed up with her greedy and materialistic ways, among other things, and divorced her too. Now she's on husband number 3 since 2019.